Hello and welcome to the Quincy Access Television Studios. I'm Mark Crosby. Thank you so much for joining me and my guest. My guest is David Jacobs. He is the Ward 1 Quincy City Councillor. David, welcome to QATV, I guess, in this format.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. This is my first time being here in this format. Usually, I've been here like questions and answer, like after election night, or
right?
Something to that effect. Yeah.
So let's make this a regular occurrence if we can.
Love it.
And we'll partner it with your newsletter, which is really where a lot of the information we're going to be talking about is going to be coming from today. Mm-hmm. And for folks that aren't aware, I do have most of the front page of the newsletter. Quite informative. You and I were talking about the updates, the fact that you have links to various programs in there, various meetings, council meetings, zoning board, license board. So it is very thorough.
Yeah, and I have to give a shout out to QATV because I thought that when people click on that link, they're actually going to your website to get that information. So it is readily available, and it's because QATV does such a great job putting it out there literally right after it airs. It's out there like 24 hours later, if not sooner. So
we'll start, I guess, with some of the items that are front and center in this newsletter. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about C Street and update on the C Street construction. Yeah. So as folks who live in Ward 1 and a lot of people who live in Quincy know that C Street's been under construction now for what seems like an eternity. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. It might seem like we're building a tunnel, but we're not, just the length of the project. But there's been a lot of work going on. This is something that transcends, this started back in, I want to say 2018 and 2019, just before COVID. Former Councillor McCarthy, had a community meeting with Mass DOT. I was in attendance. It was at Broad Meadows. It was very well attended. There had to have been at least 100 people there, if not more. I just remember, which is great for a meeting.
Yeah, I remember the auditorium was full. I mean, it was full. So, then COVID happened, and so then a lot of it, I don't want to say went underground, but during that time there weren't a lot of meetings. It's nobody's fault, So I think it kind of went on the back burner in people's minds, and then all of a sudden, all this equipment showed up, and you're like, oh yeah, we're still doing this project, So the part of the project is really to try to slow traffic down on C Street. At that Mass DOT meeting back in, I think it was 2019, it was disclosed that the street was built for about 50 miles per hour. And that's why people drive 50 miles per hour on C Street, because it was built for that. So each of the lanes at that time were 12 feet wide. So they shrunk them down to 10 feet, or they will be 10 feet wide when the project is done. So that's all like in a traffic calming measure to slow the traffic down. They've put in some traffic islands along the way. They're very narrow. They're less than 4 feet, across. Could be longer than 4 feet, but not, no more than 4 feet wide. And again, that's to slow traffic and also to kind of prevent some of these just random left-hand turns. Also, as you're going down C Street, there was, back in the 30s, there was these tendencies to kind of have these, diverging roads, so if you get it to like Plover Street or Narragansett, you could just kind of go to the left, and so there was a lot of speed involved with that. So now they're trying to make the intersections all 90-degree turns, so that way the person who's taking the left would have to come, to almost a complete stop, and then take the left-hand turn. Those are all traffic calming measures that they're doing. And so that's going to take some getting used to for the people who live, especially along Narragansett Road and I think that's Plover Road, right at the entrance to Adams Shore after the Dunkin' Donuts. But again, all part of the traffic calming measures going in.
So what's the timeline for completion?
So yeah, I knew you were going to ask that. I met with Ed Grennan, who's the TPAL director and also, just all around great guy, and Allison Luff, who's the traffic engineer. And so they have informed me that they don't have a finished date yet. They are hopeful that most of it could be done by the end of this construction season, which would be in the fall, with some punch list items moving forward. But there's no hard timeline on when the road will actually be completed. There was a lot of things that kind of popped up. You know, as you open a road that has been rebuilt since the 1930s, you know, just like if you live in a house that was built in 1930, and you open up a wall, you're like, why is that pipe there? I don't know. And then all of a sudden it's, you know, $20,000 because you got to move that pipe. So it's kind of one of those deals. And so some things popped up, even some of the work that was done over the winter, some of the supply lines that were brought into people's houses had to be, you know, redone because there were issues with that. You know, some people still had like metal gas lines going into their houses, and those needed, you know, they went under the floor, which you can't have anymore. So they needed to reposition those, you know, to the left-hand or right-hand side of the house and have it come in like on the side. So those are things that are, you know, kind of things that were unexpected that are going on right now. There's still telephone poles, double poles going on. So they're working on that right now. Verizon did a really good job over the winter. Even though the crazy winter we had, they were out there almost every day. So that's good. And unfortunately, all the sidewalks that were replaced are now being replaced again. There was some spalling that was done, or that happened. So that's when that's when the concrete doesn't mix properly. And so what happens is it creates like marks in it. Like it starts to, like that nice finished broom look that's on the, they basically use a broom to brush those lines in. It like flakes off. And so I experienced that at my own house because they did my street over like 2 years ago now. And so they've already come out and had to replace the sidewalk in front of my own house. So I don't know, they don't know exactly what's causing that. They don't know if it's the mix that's gone into it or if it's the application of the concrete. They're not really sure. They're kind of, not, I don't want to say the city, but the state and the people who produce the concrete are kind of going back and forth about that right now. So the original mix that I was told that we used was the new state mix, which has a lot more, a type of ash in the concrete mix. And now the new mix that we're using is, this is what the traffic engineer told me, is the Boston mix. So we're hoping that that's going to be better. So right now, as you come down C Street, you'll see that along the south side of C Street, they're basically ripping up all of the sidewalks from Murphy Memorial Drive, which is where the ice rink is, all the way down to Palmer Street. All of those sidewalks will be removed and new sidewalks will be poured. I guess the northern side of C Street didn't have the same amount of spalling, so they'll be removing just kind of panels, you know, the lines between the different, you know, slabs of concrete, and they'll be removing certain panels along the south side. So I think they started about 2 weeks ago, and I want to say they're just beyond the old Harry's Pizza, which is Seaside Canines.
Oh, right.
Great place. If you've ever been to Seaside Canines, my brother's dog goes there, but a great neighborhood addition to our ward. Yeah.
At the beginning of C Street is the public safety headquarters. I did stop at a newly installed traffic light that's across from the cemetery.
Yeah, so, you know, that's one of the additions. We've had some additional traffic lights installed. So one is at the police station across from, you know, it's right at the entrance to the DPW and the police station, and then also across from the cemetery. You know, and that's to help facilitate traffic exiting the DPW and the Quincy Police, and, you know, in the cemetery. I mean, people go in there. I go in there all the time. Not as much as I used to, now that my kids are a little older, because I used to, you know, when they're trying to get them to sleep, you drive around for hours trying to get them to sleep. But
for me, it was the Cape Cod Canal.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yeah. So, but, you know, I do think that is a good addition. I feel like it also runs really well. Like I know that it's there and I've had to stop there, but it must be timed well because I don't even really notice it being there. Whereas the one that's at Samoset, C Street, and Narragansett is a little bit more dysregulated. I feel like it doesn't really, you notice that it's there. You're like, it's a hassle. I do think that I've been told that there are some plans that once the street is done, you know, because right now the state is controlling the light, and once the street is done, it will come over to the city, and then the city can kind of make some changes, to the light. There's also a delay in the light because of the way the intersection comes about. There's basically, two streets coming out at one point. So you got people taking lefts and rights. So there has to be a delay in the yellow light once it, from the green to the red to facilitate the movement of that traffic, through the intersection. So.
Well, that was a pretty thorough explanation of C Street and what's going on there. Let's talk about Brill Field and the hockey rink.
Yeah. So, I didn't play hockey growing up, but I had a lot of friends who did, and
I would say it's the most difficult game to cover as far as covering a sport because the puck moves so quickly.
Well, it's so funny. Like I always said, I never got into hockey, and people are like, "Why?" And I'm like, "Well, I said to kids, I was like, the TVs today." We didn't have those TVs back then, and I remember watching hockey and being like, I can't even see the puck.
Right.
So I was like, I didn't know what was going on. But well, anyway, so this was. I have to give full credit, to David Murphy. He's the natural resource director, which is in charge of parks. He kind of had the foresight with this. He proposed an application to the community preservation a group, community administration, which is a group of Quincy citizens, and there's a member of the city council, is Deb Riley now, is on the CPC, and so that project was put forward by him, not even really anybody from the community, and it was accepted, and $250,000. This was last year, was set aside to redo the rink down at Brill Field. For those of you who don't know, it's like it's a full-size outdoor hockey rink. It's got an asphalt bottom, and there's about a 4-foot wall around it that's made of plywood that's painted white, and then there's like a 10-foot fence on top of that. And it's been in disrepair. They have tried to upkeep it, but it hasn't really. The elements down there can be tough. There can be flooding, and it was originally built so that way. It could be frozen, so you could have ice hockey there in the winter, but it never really worked out that well. So from what I gather from the application, the new rink will have a way to kind of better hold and also just, remove the water, from the ice rink. So $250,000 was set aside. I don't know if it's actually going to cost $250,000. I did ask for a price breakdown, and I also asked for some images to add to my newsletter. We're waiting. Some of the there were artist renderings. Those haven't been supplied yet, but I am waiting for those. And when they do come forward, I'll put them on my newsletter. But I went to a dad's night for first grade parents at Atherton Howe, and a kid I grew up with. The first thing he said to me was, "Any chance we can get a new rink?" And I said, "Actually, believe it or not, we're getting one." And he was very happy about that. So I was glad to be able to say that we were getting one.
Let's talk about LaBrecque Field Park.
Yeah. So LaBrecque Park, great asset to all of Wood One, especially those living in Howes Neck. For those who live in Howes Neck, the parking lot does not belong to the city. The parking lot belongs to the Most Blessed Sacrament Church, and they're very generous to let us basically use it for the park. But
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it belongs to the church. Yeah. But back again, just before COVID, the park was slated to be redone. It was part of a bunch of parks. I think there were like 17 parks in Quincy. There was a bond to do those, and that one was one of them. And so they moved the playground from the Hawthorne Street side, which was in the back left corner of the park, if you're looking at on the parking lot, and they moved it up to the front left corner, which was good, because you could park and then walk, to the playground. But one thing that I had some concerns about at the time was that, the other side of the playground was a little bit more shaded where it was before, and there's very little shade there now. You can't really use it between 10 and 4 o'clock, 10 a.m. and 4 o'clock p.m. because it's just out there, in the blazing sun all day. So, we go there in the morning. I am hoping, to get some shade trees planted. I had spoken with the parks director many years ago. I can't remember when the project was actually done. I think it was done, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years ago now. But, at the time, there wasn't really a lot of interest in planting shade trees. There was some concern about whether or not it would interfere with the third baseline coming up from the baseball field, which is in the right front corner. But I do wish that we could plant some higher shade trees along the east, south, and west side of the playground. I mean, I know it will take years for the trees to grow in, but I think there were trees there years ago when I was a kid. They've been, they aged and got cut down. But I do think, some nice tall trees would go well there, in the long term.
Let's talk about a water main break, Littlefield Street.
Yeah, so Littlefield Street, we had a water main break there on the 20th. Alice Kelly put a thing out on Facebook showing water coming up out of the street, resident of Howe's Neck. And I immediately went down there right at that time. I live right around the corner from there. And it was quite an impressive water main break for such a small street. I've seen a lot of water main breaks. She videoed it around 4:20. I got there at like 4:25. The street was underwater, and it was coming up from all over the place. Coming up from the right-hand side of the street, the left-hand side of the street. It was coming up under someone's driveway. By the time I got there, a lot of the sand, the subsurface, had already been exposed to the surface. Water flooded someone's garage. And then there's a house on the corner of Macy Street and Littlefield Street, a blue house. And he had said online, I did not speak to him, but he had said that he had 18 inches of water in his basement. So that was, just concerning. And the water actually kind of curved to the right down Macy Street, heading towards the ocean as water does, and flooded out the street on Macy Street. And unfortunately, the gas lines there are very old, and I think they're a little porous. And so water got into the gas lines. And at the height of the incident, there were 17 houses without gas. So, not necessarily a huge deal because, we are in April, but some of our most elderly residents in Howe's Neck actually live on this street. Two of them next door to each other. One of them is Leo Kelly's sister, the former Ward 1 councillor.
Right.
So, she was without gas until, I want to say sometime last night. And her gas line was one of the ones, they actually had to replace some of the gas lines going into people's houses. I think I said that to you offline. She was one of the ones who had really old gas lines. So, and it was really interesting the way it worked. Some people, this house had gas, the house next to it had no gas, the house next to that had gas. So I think it all had to do with the age of the gas line going into the house. And if you have gas, National Grid will say, a couple of years ago they wanted to move all the gas meters from inside the house to outside the house. Correct. And so I think if people took advantage of that, that's when they put in the new, the plastic gas lines, the yellow. And I think some people didn't take advantage of it or didn't necessarily, just kind of disregarded that. And so I think some people got missed. But National Grid used that opportunity to replace some of the gas lines in that neighborhood. When they did open the street up, which was pretty easy because the street actually collapsed at one point. There was about a 8 by 10 foot section of the street that just fell into the ground, about 4 feet down. But when they exposed the water main and the gas line, they were all over 100 years old. So when you looked into the hole, it was kind of like, that doesn't look good. So they did, and then when they were replacing the water line, they just cut out a section of it and then put in a new piece, and then they would turn the water back on and another piece would break. And so they had to fix it a couple of times. I went out there at 6:30 in the morning on the 21st, and water was shooting up out of the street, straight up into the air. I was like, oh, that's not supposed to happen.
Geyser.
Yeah, I was like, that's not supposed to happen. So the city crews were really good. They're really good at getting information out, helping the residents, especially the elderly residents who lived along Littlefield Street. I really want to shout out to Brian Gibbons and Carol Redden, who both live on Littlefield Street. They really helped, their neighbors. Mr. Gibbons was getting food for some of the elderly residents who lived on Littlefield Street, and Mrs. Redden was, checking in with them, and we provided water for residents if they needed it. So it was really a good, it was a bad situation, but it really shows that the community is strong because these people, they really know each other. So it was really nice to see that.
Nice community
Yep.
effort there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about street paving, because that's always on folks' minds. When is my street being paved? I guess we'll look at Adams Shore.
Yep. So there's a few streets in Adams Shore that are being done. So Plover Road is getting done. So they just, I know it says on that there, what was the date that it was supposed to start? Does it say May 16th or something like that?
It doesn't.
I think it says it on the
Maybe
letter.
it
There's but I think it was supposed to
I'll
start.
need my glasses.
I'm
for
sorry,
that.
not May. Sorry, it's supposed to start back in March. So they're a little behind. But I did go out yesterday, and I spoke to some folks, and does it have the date on there?
March 30th.
March there. So I did speak with some folks. They did rip up the streets yesterday. You know, the big machine they bring in that like recycles the asphalt and just rips it up. So they did that yesterday on Plover Road, and I can't remember the other street that was being done.
Petrel?
Yeah, Petrel, which is a smaller street, and so those streets are getting done. They have granite sidewalks, but they have asphalt surfacing for the sidewalks. So the granite curbing, I should say. Sorry,
okay.
With asphalt sidewalks. And so right now, it's just the binding layer that's down, which is kind of like that rough layer that goes in first. It looks really porous, like you can almost see like the black rocks, right?
Right.
So I've gotten some calls about that, and I just remind them that that is the base layer. There'll be another kind of finish layer that goes down on top of that. Some of the residents there don't understand why they're not getting concrete sidewalks like some of the other residents have gotten. That has to do with the mayor's office. The mayor had changed it to asphalt, I think for monetary reasons. I think it's cheaper. But as someone who has concrete sidewalks, like you can't salt them. You have to use special type of stuff. Even when you put like the magnesium down, like you have to shovel it up like right as soon as the ice melts, or else you get, again, that spalling that we were talking about, and it makes your sidewalks like not look so great. So I'm really on top of that. Like I'll throw the salt out, and then I literally shovel it, right up in front of my house. I only have 50 feet of road frontage, so I don't have to shovel that much.
So it requires different maintenance.
Yeah, it does, and the asphalt's not going to require that. But I mean, I could see where they're might seem like they're not getting what their other neighbors are getting, but then again, that was a decision by the administration to do that. So
Let's look at Manet Ave and the seawall.
yeah, so Manet Ave along House Neck coastline. It's phase 2 of the seawall project. Phase 1 went from kind of like Shore Ave in Marymount down to the Willows, which is that area where the House Neck sign or rock is when you come into House Neck. They stopped there. This has been going on for quite some time. I think, I want to say like Margaret started the seawall project in Marymount, and then Dave McCarthy was in office like when that finished. Just as he got in, I think was when the wall was going in.
Okay.
Because I know that the wall went in after that big storm. So so then this wall, this is the next phase of the project. It's 100% designed. So the design is all done. There was a interview here in this office back in October where it was only 90% complete. Now it's done. I did go out with Mr. Costello, the city engineer, a week or so ago. He actually met me down at the seawall. We walked down onto the beach. He showed me some of the things about the wall that were dysfunctional or not working correctly. Showed me what was going to change. Showed me the new height of the seawall. The seawall is going to be about 2 feet higher than it is right now, and it'll have a potential to be extended 2 feet, like the wall that had been built up to that point. Sea level rise. Yeah, sea level rise is a real thing. I mean, I see it every day. I grew up in House Neck, and you notice it more like when you get to like where the marshes are. So like the greatest place to see sea level rise is really actually on Rockland Street, where Rockland Street and Spring Street come together. There's a little bridge there, and I remember swimming there as a kid, and I don't ever remember just like a high tide coming up over that wall. Just not even during a storm, but like a couple of times a year, they'll put the sawhorses out there, and I'll go down there to look, and it's just like a bathtub overflowing. Like the water it comes in, and then it's right at the edge of the wall, and then it comes up over the wall and just spills over. And I I don't ever remember seeing that before. So, it's not, you're not going to necessarily see it at the seawall. It's in like the estuaries where you're really gonna notice those things.
And we should mention that April 28th at 6 p.m. at the Broadmeadows Middle School auditorium, there is discussion about the seawall replacement.
Yep, so the mayor is going to have a meeting. I think it starts at 6 o'clock. It's at the Broadmeadows Middle School auditorium, and they're going to, show you what they're building. It's very similar to what's already in place. The only thing that's going to be different is along Brinsley Ave, the wall is going to have to be poured in place, almost like a foundation of a house, instead of like those big blocks, just because there's no way to move the wall, into that place. I mean, we also can't put the revetment stone. So if you look along the seawall, there's usually those big boulders on the other side of the seawall. From what it sounds like, Mass DEP won't allow us to put that revetment stone in that area. So we have to build the wall in place and pour the foundation right in place. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Let's talk about, excuse me, I'm losing my voice. You were going to lose your voice as you were coming into the studio. You said there might be a problem. Let's talk about the proposed development at Washington Street and Mill Street.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know where that is, that's in Quincy Point. It's right on the line between Wards 1 and Ward 2. Myself and Richard Ash are going to be having a community meeting on Wednesday, April 29th at 5:30 p.m. So the South Cove Nursing Home has purchased all the land, or most of the land, to the east of them. There were a bunch of single-family or two-family homes on Mill Street. They purchased all of that, and they have a plan. I think it's to add like 207 assisted living beds. So it wouldn't necessarily, it's not the same, it's not a nursing home. It's an assisted living care facility.
Which have become quite popular.
Yep, they have become quite popular. So I think they're calling for like 2 stories of underground or base level parking with 4 or 5 stories, of living on top of that.
We'll end with an annual event here in the city. It's been going on for some time, and let's talk about how it impacts, or I suppose the activity that takes place during Cleaner, Greener Quincy in Ward 1.
So, Cleaner, Greener Quincy is something that has been going on, since I was a kid anyway. I can't tell you when it started, but it's been going on for a long time. When I was a kid, we always, my dad, who was our Cub Scout leader, would bring us down to Rock Island Road. He grew up on Rock Island Road, so he would always bring us down to the marsh at Rock Island Road and Frecker Street and clean up that marsh right there. And it's funny, for Earth Day, which was yesterday, myself, my wife, my 2 children, and my in-laws actually went down to that marsh and picked up trash yesterday. So for Earth Day, that's what my daughter, who's in 1st grade, she wanted to do that over vacation. So,
That's great.
Yeah, we went down and did that, for like maybe an hour or so, and then we went down to the beach and played at the beach.
So people that do want to get involved
Yep.
in Cleaner, Greener in Ward 1.
Yep. So one thing you can do is you can have your own group that gets together. So you could contact the Parks Department, or you can contact me and I can contact the Parks Department for you. You just tell them or me what you want to do, and we'll make sure that we provide you with trash bags, I shouldn't say me, but the city would provide you with trash bags, gloves. They'll also provide mulch, if you're looking to do some mulching. There's also a lot of groups that are already out there. I know that the Athen and Howe PTO always does one at Athen and Howe. There's a garden right out in front of the school. That's a big site. I know that the Quincy, different groups, like the Quincy Democratic City Committee usually does like the Paul Harold Bridge right when you first come into off of Bergen Parkway there onto, you take that right where they're building the new, parking garage, the 12-story parking garage.
Right.
But they usually do that bridge right there. But again, if you have a different group or you just want to do something in your own neighborhood, you can contact me, you can contact the Parks Department, and they'll bring the equipment that you need, to do that.
Thank you so much, David.
Thank you.
We'll have you back during, I guess, another publication of your newsletter.